Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and today is 222. Actually, it doesn't matter whether you're on the European side of the pond doing that date or here. It's February the 22nd, so it's either going to be 22-2 or it's going to be just 222. And, like a lot of those triple numbers, it's supposed to be some kind of a portal today. So can't say I've looked heavily into it this morning, but it's another nice day. I think we're on the verge of finally starting to warm up. And today I have it's funny, I was looking at my transits this morning, and one of the things I noticed when I was looking at them was that this Mars Cancer thing that's going on, Mars retrograde. Now, Mars is going to go direct on Monday. That's a big thing that's going on here, is that Mars is going direct. And hello, Kathleen. Good morning. Yeah, I was just saying I had just gotten on, and I was looking at my my transits this morning, and it says that Mars right now Mars in Cancer is in. I was noticing my first house, and I thought, oh, okay, that explains a lot of how I've been feeling, because I've had this kind of thing where I am, I don't know, and Alistair, morning, good to see you. Yeah, I've had this kind of thing where I've been, I don't know what the term is. I just, it's like I've got things that I've got to do every day. Like, this happens to be an incredibly busy time. I've had a lot of classes. I'm trying to do the podcasts and do them properly. I know that Allie has sent me a whole bunch of other podcasts. Like, I think she just sent me the third one now that's been remastered. Some of them we have to check the sound issues on, but I have been behind on putting that kind of stuff up. I've also been behind on messages. I think Joanna and I were supposed to have well, actually, I looked at my text with Joanna and we said Friday or maybe early next week. So I didn't know that we had totally planned the time, but I think she was kind of expecting it to be Friday, and maybe she was waiting to hear from me. So I was just like, oops, sorry. It was just because yesterday basically what I've been trying to do is say, okay, what is the thing I must get done today? So like, Thursday, I had to get taxes done. I was like, okay, I cannot. It's like the sword of Damocles. I'm tired of it hanging over my head. I just got to get it finished and get it out of here. And so that got done. And then yesterday I had prep, and Suda's on. Good morning. Good to see you. Yeah, so yesterday I focused on getting prepared for the Reiki classes I'm doing this weekend, because I'm doing both ends of the spectrum here. I'm doing Reiki 1 on Sunday for students in Milford. I think I've only got a couple right now. I'm not sure if more have come in. And I think I should get notified if there are more, but I have to double check with Corinna, who owns the store. And so I had to go up there to the office to get the materials that I needed for preparing for that class. And I'm doing Reiki Master class today, which is the other end of the spectrum, for a couple people who are, actually, one of them at least is, Melissa's usually on this live stream, but I've got her and another student. And so I've had to prepare for that. And then yesterday, actually, I have some more reading appointments that came in as well. So, before I actually have to go teach. So yeah, it's been very, very busy. And I'm finding that this aspect that I have of this Mars Cancer retrograde aspect, because I keep feeling like I wake up and I'm like, every day, I'm just like, I just don't want to go anywhere. I just want to not do anything, and not and I find that my patience level gets very, very low, and I'm like, okay, and it just seems, I don't know, somewhat out of joint. But then when I thought about it, I was like, well, yeah, duh, I'm a Cancer ascendant, and Mars is like poking all that right now. So anyway, I'll be very glad when Mars goes direct on Monday. And I was just watching Crystal B as astrology. Crystal B used to work at, or she used to be connected with the Rock Box at any rate, where I used to work in Marstown. And her latest video, she was talking about how not only is Mars going direct next week, but this is going to be, everybody keeps asking me about the big lineup of planets, right, in the sky, and that they're all going to be squished into Pisces. For me, that's 10th house, but wherever Pisces is in your chart, Mars is going to be moving direct at the same time that you're going to have all these planets. Now, people have asked me, well, what does it mean when all those planets are together? And basically, it's is that what it is? Cancer ascendant here too. Yes. If you've been feeling a little bit testy, and you have to kind of like stop yourself a little bit, yeah, that's what it is. it seems to be getting more potent as we get towards the end. So yeah, and I'm just finding that, I don't know, it's between that and also just a lack of motivation. If you feel like you've had a lack of motivation, I'm like, that's where I kind of think I'm talking about the things that I want to be doing or that I feel I should be doing. And I'm just like, I don't, yeah, I'm supposed to do that today. And it's like, oh, I have to do that today. And, and it's not because, I mean, generally how it is. It's like once you actually get into doing a thing, you're fine. You get into it, you do it, and you're just like, hey, I did it. You feel okay once you're kind of in the flow. It's kind of like sticking your foot in the water. It's like you want to go for a swim, but you're like, you don't want to put your foot in the water. It's like, maybe it's too cold, maybe it's this. But like once you get in and get used to it, like you're totally fine. So it's been that kind of energy. And so, so people who have sent me messages, I am a little behind on messages. So I apologize. It's not, it's nothing, it's absolutely nothing personal. I'm just having to, it's just like, I find that once I complete the task that I have set for myself, I'm just like completely wiped. And yesterday I got one of those massive, massive headaches. I don't know, anybody who's new to this doesn't know, I do get these quite regularly. And I don't know exactly what the source, I mean, there's a couple of possible sources, and no, people who get very worried when they hear the symptoms, don't worry. But what'll happen is it's not just a matter of having a headache. It seems to affect my stomach. And it also, I mean, bleeding. I get nosebleeds, I get mouth bleeds, I get all this stuff that comes along with these headaches. It's like, and to me, that's just, it seems like my sinuses like get extremely, extremely dry, but it's more like they're just extremely, extremely inflamed. And the medicines I take just make it worse. Like I would not take allergy medicine because that just dries things out and you don't need to be drier. But at the same time, I find I can't drink water during those times because I get violently sick when I drink water. So it's just, yeah, when those things come on, it kind of like everything else comes to a stop. So I guess I was just grateful yesterday that I got the things done that I had to get done. And then I thought, okay. So yeah, I texted with Joanne last night and I said, can we do Monday instead? And she was, just kind of laughed about it, but yeah, so that's fine. So Monday's good. I know she has her podcast on Monday, so I didn't want to mess that up for her, but okay. One of the things I was thinking about this morning, so if we're getting away from me and my stuff, but the only reason I mentioned it is because we have a lot going on here with, with this retrograde, and we are about to start to move into these very fierce planetary energies. And I think what's going to happen is, it's been so cold here too. Hope you feel better. Maybe Sprite. Oh, thank you, Suda. Yeah. No, I do feel better. It's something that I know when the symptoms are going to ease and go away. Because even by last night, by the time I got to like 8 o'clock last night, I was able to finish up some housework I wanted to do downstairs, which I had put off. But it's just afterwards, even when the headache's gone, I feel just very, very weak for a little while, and I have to kind of sleep it off, and then I'm okay. No, it happens, and yeah, unfortunately, there's very little that makes it feel better. I do find that I eat more on those days because I don't know, it settles my stomach in a way. But yeah, it's an annoyance, and it's something I've been living with for like 10 years. So it's not really something new, but it just kind of comes and goes at inconvenient times. So. But I found myself thinking about all this because we're getting ready to shift into this. And I think for all of you who have maybe been feeling frustrated, maybe feeling impatient, or maybe if you've been feeling, you've been in a situation where you're trying to move forward on something and you feel stuck and you're getting frustrated. What we're looking at now is it's almost going to be like full tilt ahead. It's like, it's like we've been sitting here and sitting here and sitting here, and all of a sudden we're going to go. And the fact that all those planets are going to be stacked up together is going to make things go very fast. In fact, what Crystal said, it was going to be like a 5-day period next week when like that's like it's going to be a good time to really either get going on something or really to start laying the groundwork. My second interview with the school in England is actually next week, so I'm like, oh good, I hope that's a good sign, because that would be something that would, yeah, that's something I'm definitely want to move ahead on. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see where we end up with everything. I just feel like there's a lot going on, and we all want a lot more information. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, things have been slow. We've not been really getting things. Of course, with Mars speeding up, then we're going to go into March. And as of March 1st, we are in Mercury retrograde pre-shadow. and Mercury goes retrograde on the 15th officially, and then goes out of retrograde on April the 7th, but probably you've got the post shadow for the rest of April. So just as things are getting going, then we've got to worry about communication screw ups and delays and stuff. So yeah. And Venus is going to go retrograde as well. So yeah. So again, a lot of people who have, oh, congrats and best of luck. Thank you. You'll do great. Oh, thank you, Suda. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. I hope it'll be fine. But yeah, I think it'll go okay. But it is at 5 o'clock in the morning. I probably will not be live streaming that day because by the time I'm done with that, I'll probably feel like, okay, I'm just ready to have a day. Although I will be doing a new live stream that day for Catonia. So, okay. Yeah, so we'll see where everything is kind of going here. And yeah, we're getting ready to go full tilt with a lot of stuff. But then, as certain things move forward, we've got those other two planets moving backwards, and we're getting ready for this. Suda said, I've been hearing March will be crazy. Yes, March and April are going to be absolutely insane. You've got this. Also, you've got an eclipse. You've got you have 2 eclipses in March? I know we've got the lunar eclipse and possibly a solar eclipse at the end of the month. They usually, the full moon and the new moon, the next 2 that are coming up are going to, well, not the next new moon. I shouldn't say that because the new moon's going to be coming up very soon. But I think around March 13th, 14th is when the next full moon is, and that's going to be a lunar eclipse. And then the next new moon after that is going to be a solar eclipse. So yeah, they always go in pairs. So yeah, so eclipses are already powerful energies of change in and of themselves. And then you're going to be having all of these energies. I don't even think I could go through the list right now. I'd have to go back and look at them on. Good morning. Thank you, Leela. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you think it looks awesome. I was just looking at it this morning going, really should watch this today. So yeah, today's my day to do that. But thank you. I'm glad you could join us this morning. So we're getting ready to move into a crazy time, and right now maybe kind of a sleepy time where we're kind of agitated and want to move forward. But the thing that I was actually thinking about this morning as I was doing my morning readings, messages, watching the sun come up, doing my normal thing, has a lot to do with I guess paradoxes may be the best way to characterize it. Because I think one thing that's kind of been happening now in the midst of all the changes that we're having is that when we have an idea about how things are and we say, oh, this is this, this means this. If this particular thing happens, this is a good thing. Or this kind of a person, situation, whatever is an auspicious thing. We may start to find that some of the things that things that we thought were one way are actually the opposite. Okay, I've been seeing a lot of that the rune I'm seeing is Tagaz, which is the 180-degree turn. So for example, so things that for a long time maybe have been beneficial could suddenly turn toxic. And maybe sometimes things that have appeared to be either toxic or suspicious or that we've kind of may actually be the thing that benefits us. And that's what I've been finding kind of interesting. It's like what we expect, the expectations, what we've expected. We were talking about not having expectations a couple days ago. It's like those things are reversed. And it's not the first time I've heard of this. I remember, I still keep thinking back to this, that a couple of years ago when I was working with Gina, also Rockbox Day kind of here, that she had talked to us about, and I'm not going to get into her whole thing because that's her own private vision, whatever she's had, but she definitely had this idea that there was a period of time where it's like down is now up and right is now left. We've already talked about masculine and feminine kind of flipping, at least in terms of planetary energies and stuff like that. There's going to be all these flips, and so that the way that we thought things is not actually the way that they're going to be, and that whenever that happens. Actually, my doctoral dissertation was based on that entire idea, believe it or not. Death and the Maiden, I know, has kind of come to be a book about the way in which when we focus too much on the idea of salvation or being saved and associate that with kind of a solar kind of a thing, then that kind of ends up devaluing the feminine. Like the feminine gets cut off and gets treated like something that's of the earth. So therefore it's something to be left behind. So that's kind of the thesis of it. But there was a chapter I did called Splits and Reversals. And I'm thinking a bit about that chapter now. And a lot of that happened, by the way, during the Roman Empire period, where a lot of things changed. So, for example, with astrology, and with astrology becoming more prominent. Now, astrology wasn't entirely new at this point, but Hellenistic astrology was developing a lot more at that point. And what we think of now as our modern astrology is probably based largely on the Hellenistic, at least in what we call tropical or Western astrology. Vedic astrology developed a little differently, but but they all do come out of the same original place. And one of the things that he had talked, Jake Stratton Kent's book, Geosophia, it's a 2-volume set, very dense read. You know, and I remember that, but it was a friend who had given it to me as a gift, this 2-volume set. And it was about the Argonautica. It was about the Jason and the Golden Fleece story, but it was looking at it more from it was getting more into the symbolism of it. And, you know, because as an epic by itself, the Argonautica doesn't make any sense. If you actually read it, Jason, there's nothing heroic about Jason, but he's supposed to be the hero. So there's almost a sense of, well, is there something else that's going on here? So anyway, Geosophia covers all of that ground, and I won't diverge into that because it gets really complicated. Jake Stratton Kent used to really go down the rabbit hole and go deep and find all of these interesting connections with this and many other kind of peripheral texts, like the Testament of Cyprian the Mage, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. Like, he kind of went very, very deeply into a lot of this stuff. And but I remember Jake had mentioned, he had talked about the fact that when there became this focus more on the celestial and less on the earth, on the Chthonic, because as we know, in early religion, a lot of the connections with nature, and it's how we negotiate with the natural forces that are around us. And to a certain degree, it's still like that, and it probably wasn't good to entirely get away from that. But if we look at this as that, when everything starts to become very sky focused, then what ends up happening is then there becomes this the ideas, especially about certain gods and their functions. So, for example, Hades and Persephone in this model that the Neoplatonists came up with get moved to the sky. Hecate gets moved to the sky. In fact, she gets split in two. There's a half part called Physis, which is the part that remains on the earth and that Plato kind of deems as bad. And the good Hecate Soteria, the Hecate of salvation, who gets placed up by the moon. And also, even the whole Gnostic idea that we've talked about with the demiurge, the idea of the creator god actually being malevolent in some way, or at least imbalanced. That's another flip and another reversal, right? So when these things, so what Jake's point was when these reversals take place, when you take these deities who, in addition, we always talk about, do they have an external reality, or do they just have an internal one? Because some people will say, well, this is, you know, just a psychological thing, and this is the way that we try to conceptualize and understand bigger forces. And yes, that's true to some degree. But the question is, how much of an outer reality do they have autonomously, independent of us? And so the thing is, so when something is archetypal, like Jung, I think, kind of got it just right. He was trying to find the bridge in the middle, because the archetype is something that's autonomous. Okay, it is something that exists independently of us, but it's also part of our psychology. So that's almost like the way that bridges us between whatever maybe we're experiencing out there, and how that's a reflection of what's going on. We always say in here, out there, and to some degree, there's not a difference in that respect. But so archetypally, when you take a certain category, okay, to try to put it in more modern terms, because that might be a little dated for some people. Let's just say somebody now told you, well, the devil is really God and God is really the devil, right? Jesus is actually, you know, satanic, and Satan is actually the one you should be in heaven. Like, if somebody told you that, okay, think about, even if you're somebody who doesn't believe in any of that, you kind of be like, think about how you would react to that, because this is what we're talking about when we talk about a reversal. And I'm not saying that that's the reversal, by the way, but it's but just thinking about how you would respond to that, because you already have your ideas. If somebody says that word to you, says, you know, like, for example, Satan or demon or something, people automatically have a reaction to it, right? this is an automatic. It comes out of the collective, and it also comes out of your own psychology and your own associations with these archetypes. And a lot of those figures end up being aligned with certain aspects of the trickster archetype. Because the trickster archetype has its more beneficent aspects and then its less beneficial ones. So oftentimes it kind of gets put into that category. But if you, so yeah, and then if you just claimed that, I don't know, Jesus was evil or something, like then you would just be like, it would be against everything that your psyche has told you, even if you're somebody who's not a believer. Unless you have a very bad experience, and then you think, yeah, well, I do think that. You will have people who will say, who will just kind of say that. But that's a whole separate subject of how we rebel against certain forces. But it's still, but even for the person who says, yeah, I think, this is bad and that's bad, they're still acting with respect to a system that says that it's good, right? It's like a rebellion or a defense against something where they perceive they've either been rejected or put on the outside of that system in some fashion, whether rightly or wrongly. So so there's the way that we feel about things. So people can have, based on, like, if somebody has a bad experience with a church, they may kind of go, about all of that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, just archetypally speaking, for somebody to say something like that would just, people's first thing would be like, no, that's not, it would be that kind of a thing, but if that creeps its way into the norm, and then that becomes the normal way of looking at things, then that does something to the psyche. It turns things around. Suda's saying, I'm wondering if it's time to tear down and rebuild like Ouroboros and Lord Shiva versus Lord Brahma. Interesting you mentioned Brahma Shiva, right? Because there's, because we've got, right, or to put it another way, I guess, is Vishnu, is the lotus on Vishnu's navel closing up, and is he going to wake up from his dream and make another universe, right? Yeah, because I was talking to somebody, I think it was one of my students actually, about the role of Shiva, because Shiva, very interestingly, is both a creator and a destroyer. And so because we see Shiva Shakti, the way that they create, speaking of masculine feminine balance, right? Or the figure of Sri Radhanarishwara, which is Shiva Shakti merged as one being, which is the one I think I'm using for the school this semester to show the idea of masculine and feminine integration, where Shakti becomes part of Shiva, or Shiva becomes part of Shakti, depending on how you want to look at it. But Shiva is known as the destroyer, and I do think there's the Shiva Nataraj, the dance of death that you see with Shiva, where there's that image of him. I have it somewhere around here, but it's got like the flames around it, and he's kind of there in his dance, and he's holding his drum. So he brings about the end of things, but he also is with Shakti, he also creates everything too. So there's these lines between things. And it's interesting because I think about how Brahma particularly grants a lot of boons to those that actually do tear things down. So I don't know, it's an interesting kind of a thing. I think in monotheistic religion, though, it's a little more stark because there's a little more of a strong line between who is good and who is evil. Like Brahma and Shiva are not that. They are just both parts of the cycle. Like you were saying with the Ouroboros, it's like the snake swallowing its tail. It just keeps cycling through. And like we've said, there has been talk that on the spring equinox, there's going to be the end of a yuga, whether it be Kali Yuga, like I said, or Dwapara Yuga. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I've seen strong cases for both. It's Mahashivaratri on Wednesday is what Alistair's saying. Yes, that's right. And we are coming in addition to all of this, we are coming into the great festival of Shiva. That's right. And trying to decide if that's going to mean all night in the temple or not. But probably, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pull that off this year. But yes, but you're right. Shivaratri is coming up this week as well. So there's definitely a pulling down. It may not be as dramatic as what I was saying, or maybe it will be. I don't know. But nonetheless, there's a lot of flipping of our expectations. There's a lot of flipping of our categories. And so what it ends up bringing me to is the idea of having to accept what's paradoxical. Now, to a certain degree, it's not like, oh, this is a whole new thing and we didn't know it before. It's more like we're rediscovering things. Okay. It's more like a rediscovery. It's not that we are, it's not that, all of a sudden this changed. It could just be that we are now seeing aspects of things. Or if we've looked at something or decided that one mode of being or one way of thinking about things has always been the right way, it could be now that it's like, well, it's not necessarily that it's the wrong way, but that the opposite can also be true. And that's something that I think I always talk about us having a divided consciousness. We do. We don't know how to negotiate opposites in that way. We don't know how to. We always think it's got to be on this side or that side. I pulled a card this morning from this deck, which is the Secret Language of Light deck. Every now and again, I get in the mood to play around with this one. And the card I had gotten for the day was Colors. It's called Colors. And interesting because as I'm preparing my Reiki Masterclass, I've been talking about the impacts of like color and sound and things on energy and so on and so forth. But the card said something interesting. It said it's time to move from black and white thinking to colorful thinking. Okay. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. Or if we think of the postponement card that we only see, the Four of Swords in the Osho Zen deck. When we think of when we think about it, it's the woman who's looking at this very gray thing, but there is this splotch of color, and some of the colors actually on her shirt or whatever. There's the idea that the color is there, but we're only seeing things in black and white. And so I think when we talk about accepting paradoxes, it's the idea that two opposite things can be true at the same time. Like I was thinking about our ideas of strength that we have in society. I think the strength card, as we know, has come up a lot in our readings. And when we talk about strength, the strength card itself, or at least the Rider-Waite-Smith version, shows the woman dressed in white, kind of wearing a crown. She kind of looks almost like there's kind of a virginal feel to her. But she's got her hands on the jaws of a lion, and she's closing the jaws of a lion who's got its mouth open. And she's also got the Leminskit, Suta's just talking about cycles, which is the infinity sign over her head. And the idea is about, closing the jaws of the lion. So when she closes the jaws of, close the jaws of the lion, that is actually where the strength comes from, not from the lion going after someone and tearing them apart, but rather sometimes in the strength is actually shown in the avoidance of the violence, right? In the avoidance of that. So if we, okay. And for some reason in my mind, maybe because I'm looking at electric universe theory and a bunch of other things kind of tangential to other things that I'm doing. When I look at that, I think about, they were talking about the cataclysms that may have happened in the earth. And I started thinking about the dinosaurs. And I thought, yeah, like when the dinosaurs were wiped out, supposedly a meteor hit the earth. And again, there seems to be evidence that this is what did it. Whatever, or there was some kind of a cosmological catastrophe. Leila says, I like that, feel more colorful. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah, it was an interesting way to think about it. I was like, oh, okay, we're looking at things in a broader spectrum. But I found myself thinking about the dinosaurs, and I thought, okay, what happened after the dinosaurs were wiped out, after the asteroids came? Like, what happened to life on Earth? It's said that after this is sort of the rise of mammals, but the mammals that lived were like little rodents, little mice and little rodent, really similar type creatures that we would call rodentia. Part of the rodents are the ones that survived because they were so small. So very reverently preach. I'm laughing here, okay? And they go and they would burrow like underground, or they would hide. So in other words, okay, we've been seeing the Seven of Swords a lot recently. It's almost like finding the sneaky or indirect way to do something. I mean, if something like that happens, and of course they are talking about an asteroid hitting the Earth in 7 years, that we could be in its path. I don't know. I don't actually think that's going to happen, but I'm not a scientist. So, but in any case, that's certainly something that's funny we're talking about it. But the survival is not by directly, if you would think that the big, massive creatures that we think of that the dinosaurs are, that they're the ones but when the catastrophe hits, the ones that are apparently the biggest and the strongest are the ones that don't survive. The ones that do survive and have the strength to survive are the little ones that kind of know how to stay out of sight and stay hidden. That kind of gets to what I talk about when I talk about feminine energy, because feminine energy is just the idea of knowing when to step back and step out of the way, rather than like, well, I feel like I should do something, so I'm going to act. And that's not always, sometimes that's just always an impulse that we're told that, that not acting somehow, I don't know, makes us lazy, or not acting makes us, being too passive and not, non-action can be as problematic as action at times. But it's a matter of knowing when to take non-action, right? When to step back. And so I think some of the paradoxes we are facing as a society, we have to look at the myths we have as a society. And Alistair says, the dinosaurs survived with the smaller tree-dwelling ones too, evolving into birds. Yes, exactly, right. It wasn't the big that survived, it's the small. We always think about now, if there was like a nuclear holocaust, like it'd be like the freaking cockroaches that survive, right? It would be. But again, yeah, if you had some kind of major event, it's the little ones that survive. It's not always that when you are, sometimes it's not always about being the biggest, the baddest, with the most, I don't know, body armor, the biggest teeth. It's not always about that. So that would be kind of go against our idea of strength. For a long time in the kind of cultural mindset we have, strength is the person who is the loudest and who's going to punch the hardest and surround them, have all the big guns and going to blow your head off. Like, that's what our ideas of strength have become. even in entertainment and so forth, like our heroic action has often been associated with people who have the firepower, but against something like that, it doesn't do anything for you. When you're talking about something on that scale, you can shoot at it all you want. It's not going to do anything. Real strength actually comes out of being in a space where we know how to strategize, when we know how to kind of step back, or when we know how to make use of whatever resources we have. If we don't have those kinds of resources, what's the right way to make use of them to help ourselves? So yeah, so this is why I think when we talk about colorful thinking, we don't want to think in terms of black and white, like strong equals this and weak equals this. That's kind of, I think, the example that I'm thinking of here. Because we often tend to associate strong with masculine and weak with feminine. And I'm like, it's not. There's a flow between the two. There's times when you need to act and assert yourself, and then there's times when you don't. And maybe that's kind of an easy example, but there's a lot of other ones too, where there's just ways of doing things, and we say, oh well, no, I can't possibly do it this way, because if I do it this way, this is me being lazy, or this is me being a failure, or this is me doing this or doing that. And it's like, well, is that really what's going on here? Are you actually, is that really what the problem is here? Or is it just that you need to consider that way of doing things, which you had said, oh no, I can't possibly think about it that way or do it that way before. I don't know. Maybe you need to consider it. One of the things about the divine feminine as well is that you've got this whole idea of potentiality. What are the potentials? Forest fires are another example. When you have a forest fire and the blaze rages through and tears everything down, it tears down big trees, it tears down, you have all this loss. But then what you'll see afterwards is like new growth will start to come in, and it's just these little things that start to come in, and it brings about a change. It's something else. In fact, they say that fires occasionally, while they're not necessarily good for the people and the wildlife living around the area, obviously, that they sometimes bring in new growth in places where it's a periodic part of a cycle that has to occur, kind of getting back to the whole Brahma Shiva thing too, the idea that everything that's created is at some point destroyed. And I think I was reading some stuff from Kate recently, Kate Kingsbury, who's going to be teaching in school, and she's an expert on the Santa Muerte. And that's when I was reading something she had posted today, where it was a man who was, who had the figure that had followed him, who told him live, 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 was actually the figure of the Saint of Death. So yeah, and that sounds like a paradox too. Life and death. Well, they're opposed to each other. No, one comes out of each other, out of the other. Out of death comes life, and vice versa. I mean, it's a cycle. It's something. It's not even. I don't even know if I want to call it a cycle. It's a super interesting outlook, is what Suda's saying. Yeah, it's really more that they exist in relationship to each other. We've been hearing a lot about relationships and existing in relationship, and I think that's when we talk about trying to exist in relationship, a lot of times we assume, like when we assume that we're doing everything alone, right? Or that the world is entirely on our shoulders. I have to do everything, and or I'm the only person who's going to do it right? We have this kinds of things that we are walking alone, but that's really the illusion. Nothing you do, even when you perceive yourself as being solely responsible and doing it by yourself, is done alone. You are always doing things in a system and as part of a system. We were talking about that yesterday with karma. And today it's kind of like, yeah, that's you, the actions that you take are always in a system. We always tend to like to think that somehow, we're all kind of in our own bubbles and isolated. And I realize that in terms of discourse, sometimes it feels that way, right? But yeah, getting away from black and white thinking. It's not this or that. I'm on this side or that side. I have to pick a team. It's not, we're more in the sense that there's more to the picture here. And yeah, and life and death exist as a pair. They exist in relationship to each other. It's not that they are two forces that are opposed to each other. That's something that we've gotten out of Western monotheistic thinking, is that, death is an evil that has to be conquered. It's like, no, that's really where civilizations go wrong. I was reading an Egyptologist, John Osman, I think his name was, and that was his first thing. He said, you can tell a lot about civilization by its attitude towards death. And a lot of times, like even myself calling myself transition life coaching, right? If I say, well, and I work with the angel of death, and I work with aspects of death and loss, people are just like, ooh, I don't want to work with that. But you're going through it all of the time. And it's always there. It's always part, in other words, you live because things die. Think about your food. That's what I tell people. You think everything that you eat has been killed. And even if you say, oh, no, I'm a vegetarian, well, plants are alive too. I mean, everything you eat is killed. Everything exists. Life feeds on itself. That's the myth of Shiva and Kirtimukha, where Kirtimukha is, so ego death. Well, I just think just the cycles of life, death, and change. I think the ego has more to do with our perceptions of it, our perceptions of loss, or of how it's affecting us. You never want total ego death, because ego is the way in which you interface with society. But there has to be an understanding of what the ego is. Oftentimes we consider the ego to be our identity, whereas the ego is literally like the word persona. It's just a mask. It's just something. It's the way in which we interface with the world. But I think the way it was described in one place was, we are actors playing our roles so well that we don't remember we're acting anymore. So it's recognizing that you're acting, basically. It's recognizing that you're acting, and that, your role could change, and that you could do something different. You're not tied to this image. A lot of times we feel like we're tied to a certain image, and we're reluctant to change it because we're afraid of what the outside world's going to think of us if we change it, right? But there may be certain aspects of ourselves that we're fine with, or that are fine, but we may also, it's not like we have to keep looking at ourselves and changing ourselves. It's just things happen naturally. You go with the flow. Some parts of the river move fast, others move very slow. You're kind of we're just going along. And when we say, no, I can't, I have to, time for the next roll, right? Yeah, right, exactly. And I'm going to cling to this rock, and I'm not going to go anywhere. Like it's not, like, you don't like, that was the Alan Watts thing I was watching there. He says, you don't see water saying, no, I'm going to stick to this rock and I'm not going to flow anymore. Like, you know, life flows in spite of us, basically. So it's almost like we're on the train or we're not. And, I mean, I think we're on the train anyway, but we could be just like hanging on the door and feeling like we're being dragged, you know? But so that's why they say, yeah, it's a lot of this is of accepting paradoxes and so forth. I think part of this is being able to just look at the bigger picture. Now, our center card for today, and good morning. Good to see you. Good to see you, Kelsey. I have, okay, so our first card for today is the Six of Wands. Success. Okay, riding the tiger, right? This is the idea that we have accomplished something, or we have come to a place of accomplishment. And so yeah, there's some, or that accomplishment is the focus, or being a leader or taking a role. Now the thing about the Six of Wands is that it's definitely a cyclical kind of card. We have our moments of achievement and our moments of success. And then we move on to the next thing. You know, after 6 comes the 7. We had all those 7s yesterday, right? We have this need to move from achievement to achievement to achievement, and it's kind of how we tend to function. Now, the inner feeling of which we're unaware of, we have the Judgment card, which is called Beyond Illusion in this deck. And it's funny, we're just talking about the ego as an illusion, or at least the idea that that's really us is an illusion. And so internally, you know, it's, we know the game, like we know what the game is internally. There's a part of us that knows that. Getting back to Brahma and Shiva, you know, when people say to each other, Om Namah Shivaya, they're saying, you know, I bow to you in the name of Shiva. In other words, saying you are Shiva, right? Everybody is Shiva. Shiva is present in everybody. And, you know, as is, you know, the divine is present in everybody. And so it also reminds me of an Alan Wattsism where he said, when you go to approach the guru and the guru looks at you like, you know, kind of looks you over like they don't know what to make of you. He says it's not that the guru doesn't like you. When you come to the guru and say, oh, I have this problem and I don't know how to get out of this and I don't know how to change that. He says the guru is literally in their mind thinking, come off it, Shiva. Like, you know, that's literally the reason that they're looking at you. Like they see the divine in you when they're like, are you serious right now? Like, you really don't see this in yourself? So it's more that kind of a thing. So yeah, internally, there's this sense of being beyond illusion. We, you know, we're coming around to the fact that we are not, you know, whatever limitations we have, you know, there's also a certain amount of freedom that we have. The idea that things have to be a certain way, it's kind of like, oh, maybe they don't. Maybe they don't, right? But the external feeling of which we are aware is fighting. There's our Mars energy, right? Even though this is an air card, Knight of Swords. So, yeah, we're fighting. No, I have to be the one in charge. I have to be the one to do it. It has to be this way. I have to do it that way. You're fighting against life, really, is what you're doing. And mind you, I'm not talking about this in the third person. Like, yeah, you guys are all fighting against life, and I'm not. I'm totally fighting against life all the time. And so this is something that I am trying to learn to not do along with everybody else. But it's just a reminder that a lot of times we do put up a resistance. And it's not because, and again, you don't want to get into a habit of going, oh no, I'm resisting. I'm a bad person. I'm stupid. No, it's just that we are in the habit of doing that. And think about it. It's like if somebody told you to suddenly be left-handed after being right-handed, you know, or if you were used to doing something or making a certain motion or even walking a certain way. Like, you know, some people will walk more on their toes or some people will walk more flat-footed if they say, oh no, well, you really should do more of this. I mean, think about trying to do that, or think about even when we try to learn to breathe differently. It's hard. It's something we do automatically. And it's not like, you know, we can just be like, I'm going to consciously just overcome all that and make it all go away. But the mind definitely likes to get involved. The mind likes to fight. It likes to get involved in the fray. So what's our advice card today? We have the Lovers. Okay. So the Lovers, again, we exist in relationship to everything else. And yes, I mean, the lovers can be about love and about showing love. But I feel sometimes to say that, I think feels cliche to a lot of people. And when there's times when we're pretty angry, we're just kind of like, yeah, don't talk to me about loving somebody. But I don't think that what it means. It just means, to me, love has more to do with respect and with trust. And I've said this before. So even if you're talking about a relationship with an individual, or you're just talking about your relationship with life, it's a matter of respect. Like good relations occur when you treat the other person with respect. Om Namah Shivaya, right? Or Namaste or Namaskar. I bow to the divine in you, and treating people like that rather than treating people like commodities or a means to an end or somebody that you can use to as a stepping stone to get somewhere else. I mean, again, that is part of the narrative of society. It's like, no, to be in the space of love is to treat everybody, regardless of their station or their social status or whatever else, like they are worthy of respect. And trust as well, trusting that the universe has your back. Okay, that's the way, another way that you can look at the lovers that gets beyond just individual relationships. It's we are in relationship to life. Like recognize the relationship you're in instead of thinking like, no, I'm away from all this and I'm separate. And then the outcome card is the Empress. Okay, this is the card of creativity. And yeah, so what can you create in this space? Creating from that space of connection. Creating, I mean, certain things are being torn down, but what are we going to create? Because creation and destruction are connected to each other as well. Like I said, Shiva is the destroyer, but Shiva with Parvati or Shakti or however you conceive of that, it also creates the universe as well together. So yeah, so some interesting thoughts here. I feel like sometimes it's funny how when I do these readings, sometimes I feel like the messages kind of move around to the same themes. But as we are trying to unlearn old things, I think we always need to be reminded, and myself included, that we are not we are not in isolation. Like the Three of Swords is I remember Megan Gouldner, who was an intuitive body worker in Florham Park, New Jersey. She's wonderful if you happen to be in this part, if you want to have her ever do a session for you. I don't know if she's still there. I went to her a few years ago, but if she is, she's just phenomenal, because she was somebody trained by a shaman who was a Native American shaman who was also worked for I forget what he was working in, but he worked for the government, and he had some kind of a neuroscientific kind of a job. So this guy had, like, speaking of having both, he had both elements. And I remember her saying to me, yeah, she says this, she says the belief that we are alone is that, she says, the thing that probably causes the most anxiety in people. She goes, and it's silly, she says, because the reality is we never are. But we have come to believe that. So a lot of this about accepting paradoxes is also about the way in which we shatter old beliefs. So love it. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Unlearning and not in isolation. Right. Exactly. Unlearning the patterns that say that the walls we put around us must be defended to the death. So, and again, that doesn't mean that we can't have appropriate boundaries. It doesn't mean people are just kind of allowed to move into our space and take over. But, but at the same time, you can have, people can respect each other's boundaries too. There's this idea of having respect. When people talk about men and women not being able to talk to each other, well, oftentimes that happens because there's a lack of respect somewhere. There's the idea of, I don't have to respect you. You just have to either submit to me or do what I want, or, or whichever way it goes. It's like, that's not how you build relationship. You build relationship by respecting people and kind of trusting the process. Anyway, we're past time today. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Hope this was helpful to you today. And I will, let's see, tomorrow's Sunday morning. I don't think I'm going to be on tomorrow morning because I have to prepare to go to a class quite early tomorrow. So no live stream tomorrow, but I will be back again on Monday morning. And so I hope you all